Okay, I'm going to tell Mark Williams' story. Is Mark here to defend himself? No, that's even more better. You know Mark Williams, he's one of our attorneys. Well, he went skiing with his family to West Virginia a few weeks ago, and when he came back to town, nobody saw him for a day or two, and then he showed up in a cast. He had taken a little spill. What he was doing, they were skiing. He'd had a couple of great days, but they went off the beaten path, and then they were skiing so fast he couldn't see it until he went by it. Somebody had taken the chain down. And you who ski, what does that mean? Don't go there. Well, he got on this really rough path, and he almost got through it, and then he took a spill, and he fractured his arm. It took him 2 days to figure out it was broken. That will be my next homily to talk about that, but that's another thing. He got to the doctor. They had to put they had to put a cross pin in it to hold it. It was broken so badly. And so he had that 2 or 3 weeks, and as he's coming back to see the doctor, he said that the doctor, it was really funny. He said he kind of stuck his instrument down in there to help him. He was going to take the pins out. And Mark, pretty smart guy, he said, is that going to hurt? And the doctor said, not me. Okay. So it's Lent. And guess what? It does hurt a little bit. But it hurts us all. We all get to hurt just a little. Hurt may be a strong word, but you know, looking at oneself is not easy. And sometimes it does cause a little pain. But that's what we do in Lent. We're asking all of us together, rather than looking outside, spend these weeks doing something good for yourself. Look inside. That's where the action is. And see what you find. You'll find good things, and maybe some things you want to think about. That's also good too. Well, there's no better place to start than here, in the wilderness with Jesus. And we start every Lent in the same place, from one of the Gospels, always in the wilderness with Jesus. Now, my bet is most of you have not heard of Jean Buridan, a French philosopher. But he tells a little story. He was 14th century. He was a physicist, a mathematician, a priest, a philosopher, brilliant guy. And he tells a little story that goes like this. He had a donkey, and he had the donkey out in the courtyard. And the donkey had 2 piles of hay, one here and one here. And the donkey would look at one, luscious hay, the other equally so, but couldn't decide, could not figure out how to decide which to eat. There's plenty of food, but the donkey dies of starvation. Great little story, isn't it? Do you realize he was actually, some of you mathematicians know, he was actually making a point about mathematics and physics. That a body in motion, something moving, has to have force to keep it moving. What he added to the physics equation for his time was that there is real resistance. Where did that come from? That came from his stomach. You see, he was a priest. He saw resistance all the time. And so we must have something to overcome the resistances that we face in life. I think that one of our resistance that we have is that we so often have too many choices. We have too many choices. And we're unable to figure out what choice to make. That's the donkey. What direction to go. But it's also true that sometimes we have plenty of time for that choice, but it seems not to help a lot. You see, that's the wilderness. That's where life keeps on coming and keeps on changing, but we must keep deciding and choosing and moving. Life is that way. Buridan tells us. So does Jesus. You see, he's in the wilderness. He has his entire life ahead of him. He's a young man, so time is not the issue. But the choices are the issue, aren't they? Such a familiar story. He can have all these things. He can go in all these directions. And we make way too much of one side of this story and not enough of the other. The side I want you to stay with today is all the choices he could make. Look at his attributes and skills and just raw power. What he could do, what he could be. But the wilderness, this image, I want you to really stay with me. This may hurt. Don't run. Don't run today. The wilderness is recognizing the reality of real life. The wilderness is that place of recognizing the reality of your real life. Let me try this. You come to a train track, okay? And you see the cars ahead of you, and you kind of deciding, do I go over the track or not go over the track? What do I do here? And so you nudge up, and before you know it, the cars in front of you have stopped about 6 in a row. You're now on the train track. You look in your mirror, and there are 3 behind you. You are stuck. And then you look up and see the train. The train's not tooting. The train has full bore horn. What do? Do you push them out ahead of you? Do you back up? Do you try to crash your way out? Do you go at an angle? All the things you've been taught not to do. You get out of your seatbelt. Have you ever tried to get out of a seatbelt, get out of a car, especially if it's a low car, quickly? Do you know how hard that is? Especially if you're middle-aged, how hard that can be. I know it sounds facetious. This happened to my best friend's mother when I was 18. I've never forgotten the story. Nor, I pray, although I haven't lived it well at times, have I forgotten the lesson. You see, the lesson is all around us. It is in your lives that you let me live with you, and we live with each other. We see it all the time. You have a scary diagnosis from the doctor. There are lots of choices that you can make or take. But what's the best? Which direction do you go? Do you surgery and nothing? Do you surgery and chemotherapy? Do you chemotherapy and no surgery? Do you surgery and radiation? Do you do radiation and nothing? You must choose. You see, the clock now is actually running. Now, it can be less dramatic things, so back up from that one. That's kind of strong. Another real one. Your child is struggling in school, not fitting. What do? Do you stay, tough it out, try to get some life lessons, or do you go? You go to another place. Do you seek a third party, a fourth party help? Do you get a coach, a counselor? What do? You see all those choices? The clock is running. Or you're retiring, you need to invest your money. Maybe the clock is a little extended, but you still need to do something about it. Or you have a relationship, a friendship, a close, loving relationship, your marriage, and there's a problem or two. And there are lots of pathways you can take. Unfortunately, you might think of one, and that's kind of where you're stuck. That also might include leaving. What do? You see, real life, real wilderness is right where we're living. The Scripture is giving us an image for you and me, not somewhere out there, right here. Probably right here, that's where it hits me, right here, where we really live. It's easy to get stuck in that place of choices. It's easy to not move. It's easy to have the pressure, too, when the clock is running. So if you're stuck in some place today, then you're in the wilderness. You know, it's interesting. We live in the wilderness a lot, don't we, when you think about it? Just think about it. How often we're there in that place of trying to choose when there's not an easy, kind of clear way to choose. In fact, I think it's most of the time, but that's just my thought. A place where you might need some forgiveness or healing or something inside needs working out. And you know what's amazing and still always amazing is we can't tell by looking at each other. We look so marvelous. You do, you're so good looking. We're all so good looking. You see, we look great, but inside we may not be so great. Well, it's been a lesson for me, and it's my Achilles heel to slow down with the people around me, to see them and not the circumstances, to see them and not the pieces of the story that tantalize me, to see them and wonder, is this a place of wilderness for them? If you saw this young man, Matt, on the street, you wouldn't know he's in the wilderness. He's athletic, sharp as a tack, dresses nicely, physically in great shape, handsome. Walks the street of D.C., he's going to school. And you can't know he's in this wilderness. Because not long ago, he was a Marine captain in charge of a rifle company in Afghanistan. And now he's home, struggling to put his life back together, going to school. He's got a marriage. And he's trying to figure it all out. But rather than me tell his story, let me tell you his story with his simple words that were in the Washington Post last week. Matt says, I didn't return from Afghanistan as the same person. My personality is the same. But I feel I'm no longer the good person I thought I was. There's nothing that can change it. It is impossible to forget what happened. The only people who can forgive me are dead. I do not know if my actions were right or wrong. On the good days, I believe they were necessary. When I tell people I was a Marine, the first question is, did you kill anyone? But to my ears, it sounds like they're saying, what is the worst thing that you have ever done? And for me, that is an intensely private matter. Is that strong? The wilderness. Now, we may not quite be in a critical place of the wilderness, but we do get in those complexities of understanding ourselves, our motivations. Remember the language of the old prayer book? It's pretty good. Lots of words, but a simple thought. Those things that we've done, the things that we have left undone, they stay with us, don't they? And they push us into that place of wilderness. I'll tell you a story I heard from a physician, really wonderful story. He was talking about when he was a young man. He's older than I now. Great practicing physician, teaches and writes. He said when he was 23, he was going with his best friend to Europe. He had $1,800 in the bank that he had saved hard through college. He had a Eurail pass. They were flying Swissair to Lisbon, Portugal, and then take off. He gets to the Swissair desk in New York City from their little town where they lived, and he has a message from his buddy who says, I'm going to be 2 days late. Well, he just didn't know what to do. He couldn't figure out to go, stay. What do you do? He didn't want to spend his money in New York. He wanted to spend his money in Europe. So he said, I'm leaving. He got on the flight, ends up in Lisbon, and instead of going, he thought they were going to kind of go east. He decided he'd go south. So he went across the Straits of Gibraltar. He ended up into Africa, North Africa, and he ends up going to Marrakesh, Morocco. And the first day is so fine, he can't believe it. The environment's different. Nothing's familiar. Everybody talks some other language. No one speaks English. The food is disgusting, but he can survive it. He says, gosh, this is why I'm here. And it goes like that for about one more day. And then he's alone and feels terribly alone and growing more alone as the minutes go by. He said he really got to the point all of a sudden, all this planning he'd done, he was kind of depressed. And he recognized it. He felt terrible. And he felt stuck and isolated, didn't know what to do. All he could think about was talk about, why was I stupid? I should have waited for my buddy. I did this so I could tell everybody what an adventure I am and look at me. And then he said it hit him. This aha experience, that stayed with him his entire life. He said he realized something about himself. I'm 23 years old. I'm just out of college, and I don't know a thing. He said, I'm lost, and I don't know a thing. And he says he took that lesson, kept it his entire life. I'm 23. I'm 33. I'm 43. You get it? And I'm in this place all of a sudden where I don't know a thing. What am I to do? He said he made a decision right there that he realized that life was experience and that he would take those experiential bricks and stack them to build himself. And he said when times are tough, he goes back to that. He goes back to that place and moves on. You see, Jesus in today's story is really in the wilderness. He really, really is. We can't imagine really what that's like because, see, Jesus has got to be a God for us. Don't forget he was human. Every bit as you and me. You see, he's doing this check into reality, isn't he? In his own way, whatever it had to be. Really looking at reality of his real life like you and I do in the wilderness. And I don't want you to miss it. It never occurred to me, I've been thinking about this. Chris and Tom and I talking these themes, thinking about Lent. It never occurred to me that the wilderness stayed with him so strongly through his entire life. I'd never thought about it. I can wear you out with this. How much time? Lock the doors. No, we can go on, and I want you to think in retrospect some of what he said. It is harder for a rich person. Why? You've got all these choices. Wealth brings incredible numbers of choices to us, of all kinds of wealth. Or try this one. Who would give your child a scorpion when they're hungry and need a fish? You see, God's not punishing us for having wilderness in us. We are the way we are. It is for us to work through. God gives us all manner of good things, but we still have to do some of the work. And all that work stings a little bit. Lent, gosh, I'm like you. I can't stand Lent. But anyway, it's not easy, is it? To look inside. I don't care what age you are or where you are. You know, I won't take credit because someone in the office found this, but I hope you'll look at your cover today of the order of service because it's there for a reason. Moreto's Christ in the Wilderness. I want you to see him pondering, not fighting, pondering. Look at the wild beasts. The wild beasts of opportunity and choice are all about. But don't miss what's over his right shoulder. The angels of God. You see, in the wilderness, God is with Jesus. God is with us always. We will have wilderness. We also can and will have God. Amen.